There's the oil pan right there, full of sludge. Hey everybody, it's Jerry from Bullshit Corner and welcome to today's video. This is the second last video of the series of stripping down the Jeep engine. And before we get started on this, I want to be very clear. What is worth more to you, $50 oil changes or $3,000 plus for an engine? This engine could have been prevented by regular oil changes. I just want to make that sure. A lot of people neglect to change oil and shit like this happens. But in this video, cut the bullshit, gotta open up a beer. Oh yeah, in this video, it's just about removing the crankshaft and removing the pistons and examining the bearings for wear. We may get stripped down the oil pump as well. We'll see how it goes, but right now I'm gonna drink this beer and we're gonna get to work. This is your oil pump. And that's your screen where it sucks from the bottom of the pan. This is your dipstick, obviously. And you can see right in here, that's where your camshaft went through, and those are your lifter holes. And this obviously is your crank. And these bolts right here are to hold your crankshaft in place. And then of course you can see your crank with the counterbalance weights, and then your connecting rods right there. So we're going to be in the process of removing that. Alright, so we got that guard off now, and now we're going to be in the process. We're going to punch the pistons out first, and then once we punch the pistons out, we're going to pull the crank out. Just in case you ever plan on reusing your crankshaft, using a pipe wrench is not a good idea. Like I said, this engine scrap, we're just fucking stripping it down, but to understand how the oil pump works, is that the oil pump pumps the oil through oil galleries, and through these oil galleries you get all these holes and stuff in your crankshaft, and that's what supplies the bearings the proper lubrication that it needs. But if you don't change your oil regularly, it starts to break down, is what we're going to see over here. So here's a piston here, and here's your bearing, and this is what you'd call a plain bearing, and it uses an oil wedge. And that's how it gets its lube and stuff. But you can see, don't mind those little dents, I use that to tap it out. But you can see how much dirt there was in that oil by all the grooves in there. And here's this one here. You can see everything else. And now if we turn it around, there's only one piston ring free. The other two rings are seized up. You can tell by looking at the piston, all the wear. It's burnt black, which is not uncommon, but you can see all the crap and shit that's built up on the sides by blow-by and everything else. And you can just see that like the piston is in really bad shape. And you can even see on this one here, like all the pistons, all the rings are seized, and you can see all the shit in between the rings and that. And I want to show you this. This piston's actually a matching set, so you can see right there that they all have different lettering on them, so you match them up. And this is like the proper bearing and everything else too, so you can kind of see how it goes. So let's see if I can pull it off. And how the lubrication works in the piston is that on the crankshaft, oil is going to come out of the crankshaft, and there's an oil hole right there in the piston, and you can see right there, and that's, like I said, this is your bearing. And you remove this piece, right? And then it also escapes because there's like a little drain on the opposite side. But your bearings also have little grooves in them, little tab, and the little tab actually corresponds inside there. And your bearing is actually stamped too. This one says F85 standard 8-02X. I don't know, you probably can't see it, but that's what it says. Usually with these engines, with the Jeep engines, that the piston skirt usually breaks. This is the part of the piston skirt that'll usually snap off. If you have a knocking or a ticking sound, it's either a bad lifter, or worst case scenario, one of these skirts is broken off. In my case, it's a little bit more than that. It's what happens when you don't change oil. if you can see the two holes in there, that's basically how this piece is going to get oil, is that when the engine is turning, the crankshaft and everything else that's moving is going to splash oil up, and that's how your pistons are going to get lubed up there. Those are extra holes for drainage and everything else, but you just see all the sludge and shit in there. So now that we got all the pistons out, the next step we're going to do is pull all the nuts off for the crankshaft, remove the covers, and actually physically pull the crankshaft out and have a look at it. Alright, I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see it in the video here, but as you can clearly see, even the crankshaft bearings are really worn. There's grooves in there from dirt. So I was talking before about an oil wedge on the bearings. This is exactly a good example of what I mean. An oil wedge, all it is a small film of oil that is barely enough to keep the two metals from rubbing. That's all it takes. That is absolutely all it takes is to lubricate this engine. And when your oil's bad and you're not giving the proper lube, I mean, that's a really thin film, and it doesn't take much for the metal to start rubbing. And $30 oil changes are a couple grand for an engine. Now this is the top half of the engine, so just to make this a little clear, this is your oil pump. Obviously everybody knows that's your oil pump, and as your engine's turning, like I said, there's a gear that's on the camshaft. The gear in the camshaft helps turn the oil pump. The oil pump in turn is connected to the crank by the chain, the timing chain, and as the oil pump pumps, it pumps oil all through the galleries in the engine, like all throughout the engine. Every place where the crankshaft is connected down, your oil comes out of this hole right here. Here's your bearing. You can see the bearing is grooved, comes through the hole, creates a wedge inside there, supplies the rest of the crankshaft with oil. There's obviously going to be holes in the crank. See if I can find one here. There we go. I don't know if you can see it. There's a hole in the crank right there, and then it's going to go through the crankshaft then and supply your piston bearings with oil and everything else. Now, in case if you're ever wondering, when you look at a crankshaft, you see those holes drilled in there? Before the crankshaft is put in, it has to be balanced 100%, because these are your counterbalance or counterweights so your engine runs smoothly. Without this, your engine would shake apart and fucking blow up in pieces. So when the crankshaft is balanced, certain spots they have to drill to remove metal just to balance it out. So I'm hoping that clarifies that. We got the crankshaft out. I might actually gonna clean up the crank a little bit and see if I can show you guys some scoring on there. I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see that, but there's your crankshaft wear. I mean, you could probably still polish this crank and use it, but I'm not even gonna bother to scrap metal. This engine's probably worth at least 2 cases of beer at the scrapyard. Alright, so here's the oil pump here. Nothing all that very exciting. We're going to take it apart just so that you guys see what makes the oil pump work. Alright, try to get a shot here. What we have here is a gear style oil pump, and how it works is that the one I'm turning is the driven, and it's a positive displacement pump, which means if there's no oil coming through it, it's going to cavitate it and you're going to cause serious damage. So what happens is you can see the gap between the gears right there. So a positive displacement pump means as soon as it starts turning, it starts drawing a vacuum and it starts sucking the oil. So the oil is going to go through the galleries, those little small holes right there, and it's going to be pumped out into the engine. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video of stripping out the crankshaft. I kind of basically explained some things to you. Didn't want to go too far in depth because otherwise this video will be like a few hours long. I just wanted to give you the basics, so hopefully most of you can grasp it and understand and see what this engine's made out of. And the next video that's going to be done is the head video. I bought a tool to remove the valves. I've never used one before. I've never done a valve job. Not that I ever plan on it, but I bought the tool just so that I could take it apart for you guys and hopefully see what's all involved in that. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching. Like and leave a comment below, drink a beer, and fucking keep on boozing.